Hello, I'm Naomi Lewin, former host of Afternoon Music on WQSR and host of the weekly radio feature and podcast Classics for Kids. The title of today's program for 92Y is Countertenor-palooza, but strictly speaking, two of my guests are countertenors and one is a male soprano, and I will let him explain the difference. As audiences heard every week this season when John Holliday was a contestant on the NBC TV show The Voice, John is from Rosenberg, Texas, near Houston. John reached the finals of The Voice. He sang like an angel, but never any music by folks like Handel or Vivaldi. I met John at Glimmerglass when he was in the Vivaldi opera Cato in Utica. Yes, Virginia, Cato apparently spent time in Utica, but not the one in upstate New York. John was singing the role of Caesar, Cato's nemesis, in more ways than one. At intermission, when I went out to interview audience members, all anyone could talk about was, and I quote, the gentleman singing Caesar. Aryeh Nussbaum-Cohen and I have something in common. I grew up in Princeton, and he went to school there. Aryeh grew up in Brooklyn, in a home full of Jewish music and the Grateful Dead. So, of course, he became an opera singer because that's why you get a degree in history from Princeton. The first time I heard Aryeh, I was bowled over, but I also wondered, what does Mrs. Nussbaum-Cohen think of my son, the countertenor? Well, the answer, straight from the horse's mouth, or rather from Aryeh's mother's Facebook page, when he had a leading role in Handel's oratorio Saul, she wrote, "Most Jewish parents want their kids to be a lawyer or a doctor, but I'll take my son being King David any day." Once upon a time, Samuel Mourinho was going to be a ballet dancer, or a painter, or a biologist. But speaking of mothers, it was Samuel's mother who suggested that he try singing. Samuel was born in Caracas, Venezuela, and he now lives in Berlin. In between, he studied in Paris, and word has it that while he was getting his degree from the conservatory, he supported himself by working for a baker. Of all the wonderful videos of Samuel out there on YouTube, I am extremely partial to the one with him making a raspberry almond tart. It has singing in the background and a very cute dog, but I am a sucker for the raspberry almond tart, which looks delicious. The behind-the-scenes logistics of this 92Y program are fairly amazing. John and I are in New York, where it's 4 o'clock on Saturday afternoon. Samuel is currently in Paris, where it is 10 p.m. And Aryeh is in Adelaide, Australia, where it is 7:30 Sunday morning. Thank you for staying up so late, Samuel, and for getting up so early, Aryeh. To everybody watching, please put all the questions you have into chat, and we will try to get to as many of them as possible. So I'm going to start with Aryeh and John. You guys are the countertenors, and you must have this down to an elevator speech by now. What do you tell people to explain the countertenor voice and how it works? Aryeh,
I'll go Aryeh.
Yeah, sure. So, at its simplest, it's a man singing in the vocal range traditionally associated with a woman. It's kind of the most rare of voice types in classical music, but something I like to point out often is that it's something very common in kind of the more mainstream forms of music and pop music and rock and all these things. Men singing in falsetto is kind of pretty much everyone does it. So it's not always this kind of odd niche thing as people sometimes think of it for us classical countertenors, but that's kind of at its most basic, what I would say. John, what would you say?
I basically say the same thing. It's cisgendered men who are singing in the treble voice, more associated with the alto or mezzo soprano or soprano. And we are just as multifaceted as any other Fach. I think that in the 20th and 21st century, what we're discovering for the countertenor voice is that it is just as multifaceted as any other voice. You're finding that we have different types of countertenors, different types of sopranos or sopranists. So I often talk about that, and like Arye said, we hear so much of countertenors in popular music, from Frankie Lyman to Frankie Valli to Smokey Robinson. These are many singers that we know of. Michael Jackson, even Justin Bieber, sometimes. So you hear this voice very often, and people just call it a male soprano, which I'm fine with being called as well. But as Samuel can tell you more about that, there's just different parts of the voice, and so I just tend to tell people, if you hear a man singing really high that sounds like it's in the treble voice, or the female sound, that's a countertenor voice.
Before I get to Samuel, I was going to throw in also people like Jimmy Rogers, people who
Yep.
yodeling. Any man
Yep.
who yodels is going into that voice. So
Yeah.
Samuel, now tell us, what is the difference between your voice and a countertenor?
Well, I mean, the main difference is like I didn't break totally my voice. I made a half of break, so my larynx didn't went down completely. If you can see, I don't have much. How do you say Adam apple?
Adam's apple.
Adam's apple. Yeah, I don't have much of that. So I mean, I am practically like a soprano. I do have most very much chest voice like a soprano. Doesn't well dramatic, maybe a dramatic soprano, half chest voice, and I mean I have all the mistakes that a soprano could have. Yeah, I mean I have high notes and everything. But yeah, I mean I still don't get very much what is my voice completely. I mean, I know that my technique and everything, if we go by that, I mean, we talk about that, I know that I work like a soprano. For example, I don't have this change of a register or something. I don't know how it's with you guys. I don't know about your technique because I don't understand very much that myself. I'm first of all I studied piano when I was in Venezuela, and I like to be a musician. I like to be that. So when I play something, or when I study something, or when I sing in something, I don't care very much about my voice. I just make the sound, and this is what counts for me. So I don't know. Just I say all this because I don't know very much what is a mezzo soprano.
Well, but as you said, the main difference is that when a man, usually in puberty, the male voice changes, and yours didn't do that completely.
Exactly, but I know that there are other mezzo sopranos that they are. I mean, there are mezzo sopranos that the voice is a natural male voice, a man voice. So I know that. I mean, I don't know where I will be myself. I think that I will be just a soprano. Maybe not maybe a mezzo soprano, but because I am a man. But I don't know very much.
Male soprano, because you're definitely male. So
exactly.
Just so that we get this out of the way, so much of your repertoire was written for castrati. Who would like to explain about castrati and why this is not what you are? John, you want to take that one?
Oh, sure. Why not? A castrati. A castrati. We're talking about the countertenor voice specifically, and we tend to specialize in music from the Baroque period, which is generally the period between 1600 and 1750. And during that time, much of the music was written for castrati singers for many reasons. Some of the reasons were that women were prohibited from singing in places. And so what happened is, before a young man was to have puberty, he was castrated in order to keep the voice high. Also, in addition to that, what we know about castrati is that they had extraordinary lung capacity, that which was way more than cisgendered females could produce at that time. So there was just a phenomenon about what the castrati could do. Well, we have prohibitions in place today that prohibit us from being castrated. We don't want to have that be a thing today, and we don't need it. When I think about Samuel's voice, I also think about another of our colleagues, Michael Maniaci, who actually speaks very similarly to the way that Samuel speaks, and had something very similar to occur
Yeah.
in his life with puberty and the voice not changing. But yeah, we don't have castration, so you don't have to worry about that anymore with us. You know, none of us
Right.
are castrati. We are countertenors. We still have all of our equipment, as it were. So that's my explanation of the castrati. I don't know if there's another
No, that's
explanation.
I think that pretty much covers it. Thank you.
Good.
Aria?
I have been asked a few times in my life whether I'm castrated, and I always answer yes, because if you're going to ask me that, I'm going to mess with you a little bit.
I always say yes. You want to see?
Great answer. So let me just get to the flip side of your voice. Did you ever get any negative reaction or bullying because of your voice? And I know, Samuel, you've experienced this, and I want
Yeah, a lot. I mean, still, yeah, still, even with my colleagues, even with my opera singer colleagues, they make jokes about my speaking voice and everything. Yeah, yeah, but I think that is because when you are not normal, or when you are, yeah, I mean, when you look different or when you speak different, yeah, people make joke about that. I still making that. I mean, yeah. And during my high school, I mean, my high school was a nightmare. Was really very hard during my teenager time and everything. Yeah, but it's okay. I get used to. I not get used to. You know, I just like. It's I don't want to sound like, oh my god, I am crying every night or something. No, it's not the case. I just really learn to love my voice, to love my instrument, really to, yeah. I mean, I like to look my instrument. I don't like to look myself as I am special or something like that. Even if some people say that, I believe that everybody's special. I mean, I just have this voice. Like people have blue eyes and other people have brown eyes. I think that is something normal to me, at least, you know. I don't know.
I totally have had moments in my life, and particularly when I was a younger boy, younger teen. Not so much as an adult, but as a young man, I definitely had people to make fun of me for my instrument. But I always think back to that, and oftentimes wonder why I wasn't deterred from singing. I never had a moment where I stopped thinking that music was what I wanted to do. And I've been really lucky that my family was so supportive of who I am and what I wanted to do. I mean, I come from a very musical family, so they were all super supportive. And when somebody would make fun of me, they would just tell me that it was okay and that you're going to be really extraordinary. You are really extraordinary. And so now I think about, you know, now this unique voice that we all have is what gets us paid and what makes us connect with so many people. So in spite of people making fun of us, look at what God has done. He has really put us in places where we can connect with people, share our gift, and we get to wake up every morning and share it with people. And it doesn't feel like work. It just feels like playtime. It feels like adventure. So I feel really lucky and blessed to have my voice and to be able to sing the way that I do. I wouldn't have it any other way. So, you know, that's my experience with it. Doesn't mean it doesn't come without having those moments of feeling less than or othered. You certainly have those moments. But I did a TED Talk in which I talked about, you know, when you are feeling unique or you're feeling othered, lean more into that uniqueness and the things that make you different, because one day it may make you a millionaire. One day it may make the world want to listen. One day it may make someone sit down and say, hey, how do you do that? So, yeah, that's been my experience.
Excellent. Aria, you ever have a hard time?
You know, I feel pretty fortunate. I don't really remember, experiencing that kind of, bullying or anything like that around my voice. But, I mean, yeah, maybe it's just things I don't remember. I don't know, but I don't, yeah.
Okay, then I'll give you a different question. So since, as John said, Baroque music is a lot of your bread and butter, Aria, I'm going to play your video first. So I would like you to explain the Baroque da capo aria, because unfortunately, I apologize that for time, we're going to only hear part of your and Samuel's pieces, which are from the Baroque.
Certainly. So, so basically the kind of baseline form of music during the Baroque era, most arias, and arias were the kind of songs that were part of the operas, were written in this ABA da capo format. And the idea being, you sort of come in with one idea that you present in the A section. In the B section, usually there's some sort of contrasting idea, and then the character comes back to it in the A prime. And it originated mostly as a way to let these castrati really kind of flex their musical muscles. John was talking about their lung capacity and whatnot. And all the research shows, so not only were their lungs much larger than kind of cisgendered women at the time, but also way bigger than our lungs now. And they looked like they were about at least twice as large. And so the kind of length of these lines and the things they were able to do, and hormonally the way their bodies developed, they had these really broad, huge chests and tiny waists, and they were really these kind of otherworldly beings that could do amazing things. And so it sort of gave them an opportunity to do all sorts of special things that would bring extra emphasis to the ideas of what's being emphasized in the piece. And so that's kind of the format we usually see.
And the castrato was a superstar. These castrati.
Oh, it sure was.
First modern celebrities, kind of what we think of as modern
rock
celebrities.
stars.
Women painting in the theaters and throwing things at them on the stage. I mean, it was really the kind of origin of modern celebs.
I have to say something very funny because, just something very short. We say, I am pretty sure about it, but we say that we created da capo arias because the singers make too many ornamentations. So the composer couldn't recognize what was the aria, the music, the original music. So the composer were like, okay, with all these ornamentations that you made, what is my original written? So the composers decide to make like part A, part B, like you can make something and after we can repeat like this. You can make everything you want. Everything to please the singer because the singer was making crazy things. There are crazy anecdotes of the castrati. Yeah, but yes, the castrato was also a superstar. A lot of kids were castrated. Very poor families castrate the kids because they want to make from them a superstar or something like that, and taking out of the bad time of the poor.
Right. Well, let's hear aria. As I say, unfortunately, only the A section of your aria. You want to tell us about this?
Sure. This is I chose this partially because it's a production John and I were in together, and so kind of a fun memory from back in Houston. This is from a production of Handel's Agrippina that we did together. So this is Ottone. He's kind of he sort of gets the worst brunt of everything. And this is kind of the moment he's been abandoned by everyone, including Nero, John over there. And one by one, exactly. So it starts out with this little recitative where he's just kind of going through all the people who have abandoned him, and worst of all, his beloved Poppaea. And then he sings this aria, Voi che udite, you who hear my lament, have compassion on me.
And this is from Ars Lyrica Houston with Matthew Durst conducting in November of 2018. And let's hear aria.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
That really was beautiful.
Yeah.
I have so many questions about that. First of all, that was a role that was actually written for a female voice.
True. Yeah.
Why is it now being sung by countertenors?
Yeah, that's one of the rare ones I would say that's kind of usually we see the opposite much more often, all these kind of roles written for castrati that are sung often by women. But yeah, Handel wrote, there were a couple of these kind of heroic roles that he wrote for this one particular contralto who he had a particular affinity for. But yeah, I mean, now it's become kind of standard, I think, for countertenors to sing some of those roles. I mean, I don't know. I think they just kind of fit us pretty well. And I guess it falls more into what people might expect when they come to a Handel opera to see a countertenor today singing those kinds of roles. But yeah.
So that was a very soulful, sustained aria. And I want to know, of all three of you, do you prefer those or the flashy ones? And what is harder to sing? High notes,
like them all.
sustained notes, or the flashy stuff?
I mean, I think everybody likes flashy, but I think that there's a way, especially with Handelian music. I mean, I always feel like Handelian music and Mozartian things are very mathematical. So there's always some kind of like question and answer in the music in my ear. Same thing with Bach too, actually. But I don't know. I like it all. I just like to sing. So whether it's fast or slow, I think definitely it's probably harder to sing slower things because you have to think about your breath and the line, you know, where you want to breathe. You don't want to ever interrupt the line. But I guess some people could think that the flashy things are difficult because you also have to think about how you want to ornament. But for me, that tends to be kind of easy because to me, it reminds me of jazz music. So I tend to think of it in that way, even though there are some people who would totally disagree with what I think about that. But I think it's very much so part of that same idiomatic language, if you will. So it's, I don't know, I like it all.
Improvisation, sure.
Yeah, improvisation.
A lost art for so many classical musicians, but not for you guys.
Yeah. So. Which I would say is actually the opposite for me. And I think it, it's just kind of funny. But for me, the slow stuff is what kind of has always sort of come naturally. And for me, when I was first, taking voice lessons when I was in college and learning how to sing, it was the fast stuff that took me years to figure out how to sing all those notes so quickly. It just didn't naturally fit for my voice originally. And so it's funny, but I think, a lot of it probably depends on sort of naturally what comes to us and what we're blessed with, right? And what,
Arye sang that beautifully. I was there every night when he sang it, and it was every time just absolutely stunning. So,
which it's funny too, the two roles we sang in that production, mine had a lot more of the kind of slow, lamenty music, and your role had a lot more of the flashy, fast stuff. So I guess we kind of lean towards the things that come most naturally to us too, right?
Yeah.
You were singing Nerone.
I did sing Nerone. That's correct.
Yeah,
it was only one aria in that just I could not get it. I forgot what it was now, but I remember that evening thinking that was the hard one, but I think it was just because I hadn't really taken time to.
There's one hard aria in everything from Nerone.
That's the one. Yes, that's it. Come Fuji.
It's super difficult, that aria.
Yep.
So, Samuel, from what I've heard, you're all about the flashy stuff, the color.
People like me to sing that. But people want me to sing as flashy things and coloraturas and everything. But I like challenge, so I like to make the slow things because they are more difficult. I think that you have to find more colors. You need to find more. You have to work more in the music. In the flashy stuff as well. I mean, it depends. Of course, it depends. But sometimes sometimes I have to say sorry, Handel, sorry, all the composers, and sorry, everybody. Sometimes sounds the same. Sometimes.
I want to know when you all realized that your voice was suited to opera and what made you fall in love with opera. Because I know John and Arye, you both came to singing really through your religion.
Mm-hmm.
John, you sang in church.
Yes. I'm sitting at an organ right now, actually, in the studio. So I've been, every now and then, before we were starting, I was sitting playing on the Hammond B3. That's what I grew up doing in church, is playing the piano and the organ and being basically, I feel like an instrument for the praise of God and worshiping with my community and my church. And it was in my church that I discovered music with my grandmother, who I lovingly call Big Mama, who you saw on TV. She was the reason why I really started singing. Everything that she did, I wanted to do. And everybody always thinks that I'm a good singer. And I said, well, if you think I'm a good singer, in my grandmother's heyday, when she was really doing well health-wise, you could not beat my grandmother singing in a church or anywhere. She just was a phenomenal musician in every sense of the word. You know, a pianist and a singer. And she was very, very smart. She was a teacher as well, which I also do. But I discovered, I think, I was thinking about this the other day because I went back home. I just recently had a proclamation in my name, so I went back and visited my city.
Plus, your sister got married.
Pardon?
Plus, your sister got married.
Plus,
right?
my sister got married. Yes, and so
another good reason to go home.
Yes. She got married in December, and then I just came from Houston too. But being back at home reminded me of when I first got exposed to classical music, which was in the 2nd grade. And that was when I auditioned for the boys choir. And that was kind of my introduction to it, because my family didn't listen to classical music, and they still really don't listen to a lot of it, unless I'm doing it. But what it taught me in a way was that basically I feel like classical music found me. I didn't find it. I was just kind of in it, and I didn't even recognize that I was doing it well. I loved it. So I would say 2nd, 3rd grade. Then Denise Graves sang Marguerite in 1997 at the Houston Symphony, and I sang the boy solo in that work. And I just became in love with her and everything that she did. And now I've been lucky to know her and to meet her and talk to her on the phone and talk to her in person and have her as a mentor in my life, whether she knows it or not. But it is just, that's kind of how it happened for me. And then going into college, because I was a soprano in high school, you know, and I still sing, as Aryeh knows, I still sing a lot. Samuel and I probably sing a lot of the same music, you know, because my voice sits a little high as well. But I've kind of always swung up there and just felt like opera was the way to go, but also staying true to myself, singing gospel and jazz and pop now and power ballads. So it's just fun.
P.S. I just want to throw in that Denise Graves is in my Classics for Kids show, What's It Like to Be an Opera Singer?
Ah, there you go.
I did an interview with her. She talks about the glamorous life of the opera singer.
Yes.
So Aryeh, how did you make the transition from being a cantor, which you were at age 12?
Something like that, so I first got into singing a bit in synagogue, and my first kind of performing was first the boy solo in Bernstein's Chichester Psalms, a piece that I know John and I, maybe Samuel too, have done too as adults, but it was originally written, he wrote a note that it could be a boy or a countertenor. And so I did a bunch as a boy, which is this beautiful Hebrew setting of the 23rd Psalm, the Lord is my shepherd. And then I started doing kind of high holiday cantering, and that was really my first sort of performing, so to speak. But yeah, it was just sort of a hobby. I also started singing in choir, and that was really my first kind of introduction in the Brooklyn Youth Chorus. And I was really fortunate to be in the Brooklyn Youth Chorus, and it's where I first kind of heard classical music and, you know, started hearing it by singing it, obviously, and being in these productions and things and hearing other people. But it was actually more the pop gigs we did that were definitely my favorite as a kid. It was the backing up Billy Joel and Elton John and Sting. Those were the ones that were really exciting to me. And it's actually how I became a countertenor, was that, you know, my voice dropped when I was 12, 13, and I think we had just backed up Elton John or something like that, and I did not want to leave the choir. So I tried to finagle and still sing the high notes, even though it wasn't so natural anymore. And I kind of stuck with it. But yeah, then I went off to high school. I just loved singing in choir. So I went off to LaGuardia High School, Performing Arts, of course, on the Upper West Side. But when I went off to college, I had no kind of intention of pursuing a musical career. I was majoring in public policy, and I saw my first opera while I was in college, and it kind of changed my life and made me decide that maybe I wanted to give this classical professional singing thing a try, at least for a couple of years. And it's gone better than I anticipated, so I think I'm sticking with it.
Well, and Samuel, you were in the ballet world. Was it a big to opera?
Well, it was a doctor who told me that I can sing opera, because with all this high school bullying and everything, I went to a doctor and I said to him, I said, like, I really want to change my voice and everything. And yeah, it was a hard moment for me, but he told me, well, why you don't sing opera? Why you don't try to sing opera? You know, you can sing Baroque music. It was the castrati and everything. And this is, this was in maybe 2000 something. So I took the computer and I just look on internet and everything, and this is how I discovered opera, because in my family, I mean, no one listened classical music. Yeah.
Very interesting. So another interesting thing, repertoire for countertenors kind of came to a stop in the early 19th century. The last opera with a castrato role premiered in 1824, a Meyerbeer opera.
Mhm.
And then it wasn't until the mid 20th century that the countertenor revival started with Alfred Deller and Russell Oberlin. And I looked it up. The first time a countertenor sang at the Met was 1988, which was their first performances of the Handel opera Giulio Cesare.
Jeffrey Gall.
Jeffrey Gall and Eric Lee Reagan both made their debuts in that production.
Yep.
But not in the title role, which was another castrato role. That was Tatiana Troiano.
Yep.
Which, we love Tatiana Troianos. It's okay. We'll let her take that one.
Yeah.
The countertenor to actually sing the title role in Giulio Cesare at the Met was David Daniels in 2007.
Yep.
So my question is, when did singing countertenor become a viable career option, really?
I don't know. I mean,
It started in the mid 1900s.
I would say like the late 90s to the 2000s. I feel like that resurgence of, I really do feel like David helped to usher that in. David, Derek Lee Reagan, because I know that Derek Lee Reagan was also an influence on David Daniels. And Jeffrey, you think about all these singers, Jeffrey Gall. I mean, I know Jeffrey Gall personally. He's a dear friend of mine. And I can tell you that it was because of their work in the 90s, the 80s and 90s, that we are able to sit here and talk to you today, and that these, that they made significant strides in our music that made it more possible. People were so, it kind of harkens back to when it was Baroque. People were so enamored by the voices of these individuals, these men who were singing in this music, that it made them superstars in their time, and then it made people want to look for this music more. So you would find that anytime that people were doing early music at opera companies, most often it was David Daniels or Andreas Scholl or, now Yestine Davies and Anthony Ross Costanzo and Arye and even little old me, sitting up there and doing these roles. And so I don't know. I just feel like it became such a really popular thing in the 2000s. Really, when I think about it, for me, just thinking about when it really happened, and now you just find everybody wanting to explore and have adventure with it, and I think it's perfect because it makes people understand that the countertenor voice is just as viable as any other voice. And so when I meet composers who are writing today, I always tell them, I say, are you writing for the countertenor voice? And if you're not, you're behind the times. So you better get with it and write for the countertenor voice. We are just as important as other people. And I also want to say, even though we're not talking about them today, it's important for composers to also write for contraltos. I think that music is just as important too.
So, all right. I think that's a perfectly complete answer. And so I'm going to move on to repertoire that you have stolen from sopranos, because you all have. And we're going to let Samuel sing something that he stole from a soprano, because this was not written for castrato.
She was a castrato.
This is the video that we have of Samuel is, well, why don't you introduce it?
Yeah. So it's the aria of Cleopatra, Da Tempesta il Legno Infranto. It's the last aria of the character at the opera, And Cleopatra is just very exciting because the opera is going to finish soon and she can go home. It's practically that. I mean, she's very excited because everything, she's saying like all the storm and everything, literally she's saying the storm is finished and finally I can be with my lover and everything. That is Giulio Cesare.
It's what we would call, in Broadway terms, the 11 o'clock number. Broadway term for the big flashy number right before the end, when everybody's just grabbing their coat to go home. So this is from Handel's Giulio Cesare. And as I said, it is not a role that was written for a man. It was written for a female soprano. And this is from Samuel's performance at the Neue Stimmen, New Voices semifinal concert in Germany in 2017. That was beautiful. And I should add that this was the B and then the repeat of the A section of the aria. You could hear all the ornamentation that
So we got one full aria, right? A bit different pieces, but we've got it all together. One ABA.
Samuel, why did you choose that particular piece for a competition? I should add that that was the Duisburg Philharmonic with Graham Jenkins conducting.
Yeah, wonderful. Graham Jenkins, wonderful person. Oh my God, this is so funny because I haven't watched this video for, I don't know, since this video was in YouTube, I didn't watch it again. It's funny to watch it again.
Why did you choose that aria?
Well, it's a long story. If you want to hear it, I can tell.
You make the short version, the long.
Well, I can tell you the short version. This competition, I didn't plan it at all. I was going to I was going to Barbara Bonney because I studied with Barbara Bonney, and she lived in Salzburg, and I traveled
Barbara
Paris, Salzburg.
You're studying with Barbara Bonney, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I was studying with Barbara. I just was
Wonderful.
started with
Grandma,
Barbara Bonney. So
retired.
I took a flight Paris, Vienna, and after I take a train Vienna, Salzburg. No, and one friend told me, oh, there is audition for this competition, and the audition is for free. And I was super poor, like all the students. So I said, oh, if for free, I go. So I looked to the list and everything. It was like, oh my God, no Baroque pieces and everything. And because they are imposed areas, and it was like, oh my God, no Baroque pieces and everything. I was not tempeste. So I said, okay, let me do that tempeste. And this is why I choose to sing that aria. But I love it. I love this aria.
No.
I like the aria.
So you all entered competitions and done really, really well. Arya and John, you both took third place at Operalia. Arya, you were a Met National Auditions Competition grand finalist. John, you obviously were just a finalist on The Voice. And Samuel, you have done well, Marseille Opera and Neue Stimmen. So what is your mindset when you do a competition? Is it sort of Veni Vidi Vici, or this is going to be fun, or oh my God, or I can't imagine what it's like backstage with a bunch of really nervous singers. Arya, why don't you start? Because you did the Met competition.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think I've found competitions to be pretty stressful. I think when we're performing roles, it's pretty easy to sort of release into that. And when you've rehearsed a character or whatever it is, to not be thinking, oh, there are people sitting out there judging me, even if there are critics or whatever listening there, it's not really at the top of your mind where, in a competition, obviously you're being judged inherently. But I would say in my mind, it's interesting. I think competition singing and audition singing, I think it's a different skill set to me than performing full roles. And it's something that I feel like it was the skill set I was able to sort of develop better kind of earlier. It took me a little bit longer to figure out exactly how I wanted to prep a role and then work over the rehearsal period to shape a character and then present that in performances. But in competition, for me, the idea is really if you have 1 5-minute aria or 2 5-minute pieces, to really try and take the audience on a journey. And to me, what I found, kind of made me most successful was really focusing on that kind of dramatic element, because I think so many people are just so stressed about being in a competition that all they can really think about is, oh God, I hope my high note goes well, or whatever it might be. And I sort of, and I guess the first big competition I did was the Met competition. I was very fortunate to win and very surprised. And we were very fortunate to work with these kind of staff directors and whatnot at the Met to kind of prep over the week leading up to the finals. And it was in that time that this one great director really worked with me on that sort of whole side of things. And I think how, ending up succeeding in the Met competition kind of taught me that, maybe really leaning into that dramatic side of things and trying to take the audience on a journey and focusing on that for my 5 minutes, that maybe that would work out. And I've been fortunate. It's kind of helped since then. But yeah, I don't know what you other two gentlemen would say.
Well, we obviously weren't all about The Voice.
Well, I won't talk too much about that, but no, I'm just kidding. I in terms of competition, I'm probably I don't know this because I don't think we're all monolithic in terms of, just singers. But in competitions, I typically don't stay around to hear other singers. And it's not because I don't like them or that I'm not in love with their voices. I know myself really well. And when I hear other singers, sometimes it can get you out of your head. So I typically will stay in my dressing room until it's time, right before it's time for me to leave to sing. And I did the same thing on The Voice. And we use in-ear monitors. And so if the other person, typically there's a person before you, because in the show, I almost always went last. So there was always a person on before me, and they would tell me, which I loved. The sound guy would say, don't put your in-ears right now because it will mess with your sound. It'll mess with your ears. Hearing another singer, their volume is different, their levels are different. So in a way, it kind of worked with my process. Not because I love everybody. So anybody who knows me, I'm a lover of all people. I just don't listen to a lot of other singers before I sing. And then I go onto the stage and I sing. And my thing, it's not necessarily a nerves thing, because I do have that. But my aim is, how can I use the song, whatever I'm singing, to connect with the audience? And so in everything that I do, from being, as Arye would know, from being in the role, I try my best to convey all that text and that feeling and that emotion the same way I would do it during a role. I do that in the competition. And even for The Voice, where there was nobody there in the audience beside the judges and the 200 or 300 people that were there watching virtually, I would sing to them, but I was really singing to the camera, singing to the people out there at home who were also desperately wanting to be in different places. I mean, we're living in a pandemic right now, so I was fortunate enough to be able to share my gift with 8.3 million people a night on TV. And so my aim was to use that platform to try to get through the TV, share myself, share my gift, and share my spirit with them. I know this sounds really bad and I don't mean it to, but I'm not really so concerned with other singers when I'm doing a show. I have to, and when I'm doing a competition, I really have to be thinking about me and what I'm doing, and how, if I'm doing an opera, how I can be of service to my colleagues on the stage. How can I give of myself? How can I give stage? How can I give light? How can I give love to them with my character? But in a competition, it's very different. I'm just like, okay, Holiday, think, pray, execute, feel, connect, sing, give love and spirit and heart. And that's what I'm thinking. But I want for everyone to do well, but I have to want the best for myself in that situation too. So
Was this was being on The Voice something you had always wanted to do, or did this?
it wasn't something that I had always wanted to do, but it was something that I had wanted to do. I was very curious about it because, you know, as opera singers, I think so many times when a lay person sees us out on the street and they hear us sing, and they're like, "Oh my God, you should audition for The Voice, or you should audition for American Idol, or America's Got Talent."
Especially as
Every single one of us is like, "Oh, well, I am an opera singer and I don't do things like that." That's usually the answer. And I kid you not, you know, a lot of my friends, and I have been like that before, but then a part of me is curious. I've always been, even as a kid, I was always very curious about the possibilities of what can be. And so lately, this is too much, but lately, for the last 3 years, I've been doing regret minimization. I have a regret minimization process or mindset. And Jeff Bezos, the head of Amazon, is how I got into this, because this is the way he thinks. I started to think, if I were 70 years old or 80 years old, would I regret not having done this show? And the answer was yes. And so in my life, in order to have regret minimization, if I feel like down the road I will regret doing something, I do it. I say yes. And so that was what happened with The Voice. And I had the time, and I thought, why not? Go give it a try. Why not me? And then I got into the top 5. So how about that?
How about that? What I want to know is, how did you get in there to begin with? Because they must get a gazillion auditions.
40,000 people auditioned to be on the show. And then I think they narrowed it down to 86 or something like that. 86 were invited out to LA for the executive auditions. And then they narrowed it down to people who had the top 40 were the people who had chairs turned for them. So 40 of us out of 40,000 had chairs turned for them. And then it narrows down from 40 to 27, then down to 20, then down to, I think, 17, then down to the top 10, then the top 5 or something like that.
For people who have not seen The Voice, and I watched every episode that John was on, chair turning means that one of the coaches wants to work with you and selects you.
Yes, yeah.
You have to get a chair turn in order to.
Yeah, it's exactly right. Them turning their chair is an indication that they would want to work with you, and the choice is yours to make about whatever coach you'd like to be with. I am happy to say I got 3 chairs. And the only chair that didn't turn was Blake. But even Blake, he told me, he was like, you know, the only reason he didn't turn, he's like, I didn't know what to do with your voice. He's like, I know you're not going to pick me. I was like, yeah, you probably were a little right. I'm not a huge fan of country music, but I respect him and what he's done in his career. But I'm happy that I was with John Legend, who is somebody that I've adored my entire adult life, his music and his artistry. And we have a similar background. Arya, you were going to say something?
Oh, yeah, I was just going to say about people saying, you know, you should all go on American Idol, or, you know, I guess it used to be American Idol, now it's The Voice. And I think it's funny too. I think we've all watched those shows, and every couple years there's often a countertenor who goes on America's Got Talent who's like, some guy who works at a bar and can sing a half decent falsetto and sings a sort of operatic piece, and people go crazy, and we're sitting there listening. We're like, he is not that good.
Yeah.
Like, we all probably sit there sometimes and think, what if I did go on? Because people are just not used to hearing our kind of voices on those shows, and I think John showed that it can obviously be a big success.
Yeah.
Let's hear John sing.
Yeah.
So, true to form, John's video is not from a Baroque opera. John, you're actually doing double duty in this performance. I had to cut off the very beginning, but we still get to hear a lot of you. Tell us what you're doing.
Here, I'm going to be singing Summertime from Porgy and Bess. Of course, this is one of my very, very favorite things. Porgy and Bess has become synonymous with jazz singing, as many jazz artists have covered this incredible aria. And it's just a song that I've loved. In fact, when I first started singing jazz, it was one of the very first things that I sang because I was very familiar with it. But here you'll find me singing. I have on my blue coat that you guys saw on The Voice, which is one of my favorite pieces of my accessories in my closet. But I'm also playing the piano, which is a part of my life, and just singing and singing from the heart, singing Summertime. So I hope that you enjoy it as much as I enjoyed singing it and playing it.
Okay.
Summertime, and living is easy. Fish are jumping, and cotton is high. Oh, your daddy's rich, and your ma is good looking. So hush, little baby, don't you cry. One of these mornings, you're gonna rise up singing. Then you'll spread your wings and take to the sky. But till the morning, there's nothing can harm you. With Daddy and Mommy standing by.
Yay.
Gorgeous. Just
Thank you.
and you're also a wonderful pianist. And
I try my best.
you played saxophone in high school and you were a drum major?
I was. I played the saxophone in high school, the tenor sax, and I was the first African American drum major at my high school, head drum major. So
Okay.
for 2 years. Yeah.
And who else plays instruments?
And
Samuel,
my,
you
Yeah, I play piano like an opera singer.
Okay, I say I play singer's piano. You don't want to hear me sit down and play any kind of concert piece, but when I'm learning a role, I can sit down and play the chords and play my line and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
So John sang music from a 20th century opera. So I want to talk, and John, you mentioned that you tell composers they need to be writing for you. The first opera with a role for a countertenor was A Midsummer Night's Dream by Benjamin Britten. That was not written until 1960. He wrote the role of Oberon for Alfred Deller. Aryeh, you are sitting there in Australia about to sing Oberon for the first time at the Adelaide Festival. What's that role like?
Yeah, I'm very excited. I think for all countertenors, it's kind of one of those touchstone roles just because of its historical significance. And, I think it's some of the first music you sing as a countertenor. Your voice teacher always gives you I Know a Bank, the famous aria from it. And so, yeah, it'll be my first time singing the whole role. I've sung more than half of the role over the years in different scenes and things. But, yeah, I'm really excited. And I feel very fortunate just to get to be here in a part of the world where COVID is kind of under control. I'm in my quarantine right now, actually. I'm on day 12 out of 14 inside this wonderful hotel room. But yeah, I feel very fortunate.
You haven't been allowed to go out, right?
No, it's very intense. I mean, armed guards and police members of the police and everything all around. It's very, it's serious, but there hasn't been any community spread of coronavirus here for months and months. So, and the stat that just blows my mind, the state, South Australia, that I'm in right now, the entire pandemic has had only 4 deaths. And so to think, how many lives are saved by us spending a couple weeks inside a room to make sure the virus doesn't spread. It's so worth it.
And I understand that you gave an impromptu concert.
I did. So, I've been locked in this room and practicing, of course, as we all do and would. And the walls are thin, I guess. People started to hear kind of over my balcony. And before I knew it, people were peeking their heads out of their windows. And some of the nurses and hotel staff were gathering on the street below. And then they asked if I would do a little kind of concert over the hotel TV channel for the fellow guests. And I did that, a couple days ago. It was really fun. And yeah, it's fun because, all these people, certainly not your traditional opera fans or, me singing in this room is not what they're used to hearing, but I think they've become fans. So it's been fun.
And was anybody startled to find out that, as they said on The Voice, you're a dude?
Totally. I think it was funny. It took when the folks were down on the street, the nurses and hotel staff, they were trying to figure out where the singing was coming from. And when I eventually saw them kind of find my room, they were like, no, it definitely can't be him. So it took a while to figure out, oh, no, yeah, it's coming from that guy up on the 3rd floor.
What contemporary composers are writing great music for your voice now? I know Aryeh and John, you've both sung contemporary operas. I don't know if you have, Samuel, but who's doing good work for countertenors now?
A lot of people, mostly all the composers are working with countertenors.
Samuel, have you sung contemporary music?
Very little. I still not used to sing contemporary music because I think that you need to. It's not a unilateral. It's not one line sound like all the classical music. I think that it's a 3D sound. I have to say, even 6 dimension sounds. It's something very special, but I am very open to that. I really open to experience that.
Yeah, Jonathan Dove writes a lot of beautiful music. Huang Ruo has written some great music. I think he wrote, I forget if it's called M Butterfly that he'd written, I think, for Justin Kangmin Kim. And Daniel Bernard Roumain has written for me. Taishan Sori.
And I
I'm just thinking.
should say, John and Arya, you are both next season making debuts at the Met in
Yes.
contemporary countertenor roles. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, Matt O'Coin wrote Eurydice, and there's a countertenor role in there. And what are you singing, Arye?
And I'm doing the Hamlet by Brett Dean, Australian composer actually, who wrote this setting of Hamlet that premiered at Glyndebourne a couple of years ago. Yeah, I think composers. It's interesting to me. I think composers today love taking advantage of the countertenor voice, particularly for roles that they want to be otherworldly in some kind of way. And I think, yeah, it just kind of inherently has that kind of quality for people, especially if they're not expecting it when, one of us walks on stage to hear this very high voice coming out of you. And so it's great seeing composers, I think more and more, obviously we're talking about Oberon being the first role, and just as the number of countertenors and different varieties of countertenors has really proliferated over the years. And, now we're all very fortunate to be part of a generation of countertenors where there are so many of us specializing in so many different kinds of things in ways that would have been unimaginable 20 years ago. I think it's also true in terms of the repertoire being written for countertenors, that it's just become so diverse. In all different styles of contemporary opera and all over the world. And I think we're all grateful for that. And it's a great thing.
I want to get to audience questions, but first, John, you mentioned teaching, and I know that's extremely important to you. When I studied voice, some of my best teachers were actually men. So I'm curious to know what teachers have been best for your voice, and does their gender matter? And do you think it would have helped to study with a countertenor?
I don't think it would have mattered to me. I've only studied with women teachers, and generally mezzos. I've felt that the mezzos that I've studied with have been so good for me, and because I feel like so much of what our singing is so akin to what a mezzo would do. But on the other side of that, singing is singing. Good singing is good singing. Good technique is good technique. Whether you're studying with a man or a woman, as long as they are good technicians, that's the important part. And I am a teacher. I teach. I'm an associate professor of music at the Conservatory of Music at Lawrence University. And I've been teaching in academia. This will be my 6th year. Currently, I'm on sabbatical for this term because I'm doing an album project. But I am at that university and I love it. My students have been very successful and in their own right have such amazing careers. One of my students, Mariah Little, was just Miss Seeley on the Color Purple national tour. So, I'm really proud of all of my students and what they do. They're doing all extraordinary things. Some of them are fantastic teachers themselves. And that's, as I get older, and not too old, let me say that, but as I get older, that's the most beautiful thing, is seeing my students become teachers and passing on the lineage, as it were, to their kids that they're teaching. So yes, teaching is very important to me, and doesn't matter if it's a male or a female. I tend to study with female teachers.
And Samuel, you mentioned Barbara Bonney, who is a famous.
Yeah, I studied with Barbara. I'm a very good friend. Today we are very good friends. But yeah, I studied with Barbara, and that was very helpful for me, because for me, a lot of people want to teach me. To have this countertenor system, and I couldn't feel, these passaggio things and all this stuff. And Barbara just told me, okay, Samuel, just speak and sing. And this was the best for me, because you can hear my speaking voice, and I practically sing like that as well. There is no, of course, there is different, because I put notes in my speaking voice, a certain. I put the vocal line that the composer write, but I just use my speaking voice, and that's what's the most helpful for me. So for me, it's important to study with a woman in that aspect. And now I am taking some lessons now with because I discover another. Well, I am just 27. I just had 27, so I still my voice is still fresh. So I still don't know very well my instrument. So now I am discovering a high soprano part of me. So I am studying right now with Jessica Pratt, this Australian soprano. Well, she's from England, but she's Australian as well. Jessica Pratt, and now I am discovering this high coloraturas because I will sing Glitter in Royal Opera in Copenhagen. So yeah. Yeah, but it's funny. I have to say, it's very funny. It's very interesting for me to sing this very high thing.
Yeah, I was going to ask about what's your highest note, but first, Arya, why don't you tell us about your teacher experience?
Totally. I was just going to say, it's funny, again, both of you guys talking about studying with women, and I guess, now thinking about it, I've only studied with men pretty much, almost exclusively. But I think the important thing, as John was saying, is, a good technique is a good technique. And it's funny to me, even with the, huge just explosion of countertenors that we've seen in the last, 10 years or whatever it is, still, when I was coming out of Princeton and trying to find a voice teacher to sort of assemble my own kind of studies, I reached out to most of the kind of elite teachers in New York. And many of them wrote back to me and said, oh, best of luck, but I don't know what to do with the countertenor. And I think it's interesting. A lot of teachers are still sort of afraid to take us on. But I was grateful, to study with a great teacher who, just taught me like he would have taught a mezzo, because the acoustics are the same. And, that's really what it is at the end of the day. A good technique is a good technique.
Yeah.
John and Arya, do you consider yourselves to have a mezzo range? Or, is that where somebody asked me what your highest notes are, or where you're comfortable? What's your comfortable highest range?
I can sing a high C. I don't often do it in shows, but I sing really high. I don't call myself a sopraniste because I feel like I've talked about this before, but I feel like there is such a, not a stigma, but people have so many conceptions of what they feel, like preconceived ideas about what they feel a male soprano should do. Well, if you're a soprano, you should be able to sing this, or if you're a soprano, and sometimes you can't sing it because of where it lies, but it doesn't make me not a soprano. But I definitely sing more of that stuff, but I just call myself, to make it easy, I'm a countertenor, and I sing high notes, and I also sing very low notes. So I just sing.
Which you heard beautifully in Summertime. I loved how you...
Yeah.
I just wondered, what your comfortable tessitura is.
Mm-hmm.
Arya?
Yeah, I'm definitely the lowest of the three of us range-wise. I would say I'm in the more like, sort of old school, I guess, countertenor kind of range, which is more traditional, like, mezzo or contralto-y. But yeah, the highest note I'll use in performance is an F sharp or a G. And my vocal cords physically cannot vibrate above an A. So definitely different than the other two fellas here.
And I sing up there all the time. Yeah.
Sam, you obviously got high notes for days.
Yeah, I have a lot of high notes.
You can probably go a whole octave above me, I would guess.
Sorry?
I would guess you can go almost a whole octave above where I can, I would assume.
Yeah, I can sing. My teachers always told me that I shouldn't say how high I go, because everybody would ask me to sing the Queen of the Night.
You sing the Queen of the Night aria.
This is not I have to say, this is not a very hard aria. And I know that all the coloratura sopranos will say that it's not a hard aria. The problem of this aria is like, this opera is like everybody in the opera is sitting waiting for your aria like this. Like, please sing the aria. I want to hear that. I want to hear. Everybody's waiting that. And this is I think this is the harder of the role. But the staccato in the high F is not something. It's not something I have to say is super difficult, because you only do it 2 times, So it's not something like, I don't know, maybe Lucia or Sonambula. These are difficult stuff, because you have to go very low and very high. But yeah, if we go very high note, yes, I have a F and I have a F sharp sometimes.
Okay, let's get to some of the questions we've had come in. Somebody wants to know if you have any pre-performance rituals. Something
I try to don't have. I really try to don't have, because the day that I will miss that, I will be in panic. I will have a panic attack. So I really try to don't have any ritual. I really try just to enjoy. This is my ritual. Enjoy the show. Feel like this is the last one that I will make in my life, and I really like to enjoy this show. When you were talking about the competition, my ritual for competition, I always smile and make a lot of friends. I don't care who wins and who don't win. But some people win and some people don't win, and this doesn't matter. I really try to enjoy every second, because I love music. I really love to make music, and I like to enjoy that.
John?
Typically for me before a show, what I do, I wake up early in the morning, not super early because I'm not a morning person, but but I get up, and then once I'm up, I do not go back to sleep unless I am super tired. But I stay up. I will eat breakfast like a normal. This is really my ritual. I have like one egg, two pieces of bacon, with a egg McMuffin, or not an egg McMuffin, a English muffin. That tells you how hungry I am. I want McDonald's. And then I will, wait a little bit. I try to talk a little bit. I warm up first thing. Then I take some time off, and then 4 hours before showtime, exactly 4 hours before showtime, I have dinner or a lunch, whatever it is I'm going to have, and I'm making sure that it's not too heavy. And I also make sure that it's that long before the show so that it has time for digestion, because the last thing that you want to do is be on stage and feel like you need to go to the bathroom or do anything. So you want to be completely focused. And that's just the skinny of it, is really making sure that you're completely focused. I always have, this is so funny, but I always have my book opened to the very first page. And that's it. I do not turn it. I'm just like, what is the very first thing I'm going to say? Because sometimes your nerves, you'll be like, what's that line? And it's just there. It's just open, and I don't turn it. I just leave it on the first page, and then I go out and do the show. Because most of the things I do now, I'm always on the first dang page. So so there you go, which is a blessing. It's not a curse. So that's usually what I do. And then I go out on the stage and I have fun. You talk about fun, I'm just out there living and enjoying.
As it should be. Arya?
Yeah, I would say, I guess I'm sort of in between. I don't have a super strict, I don't eat the same thing every time. But I do have sort of a bit of a regimen, and, just trying to eat healthfully and kind of, I want to feel full, but with, some like lean meats and vegetables and all that kind of stuff. But then I do have a routine that I do in just yoga and Alexander technique, which is, I think most of us have studied Alexander technique. It's kind of a form of working on tension release throughout the body. And I studied with wonderful Alexander technique teacher in New York, Bill Connington. And we developed sort of a routine that I use, is about half an hour of different, mentally focusing on different parts of the body and releasing tension in different parts of the body. And I kind of stand up from doing that, and I feel totally sort of refreshed and ready to go. And that's kind of my routine.
Another question. You are all amazing. Thank you for educating us. Do you feel that the world, and we've gotten into some of this already, do you feel that the world is changing and countertenors have more flexibility in the repertoire, roles, art song styles they can sing?
Yes. That's a very simple answer. Yeah, I believe that.
I've heard countertenors sing entire art song recitals.
When I was going to say, we were talking about the different kind of generations of countertenors, and that it was really kind of David and Andreas's generation that really sort of opened up the kind of box for countertenors. And I think it was their generation that, that was the first time we saw countertenors recording CDs of French Melody or German Lied, I think nowadays, like I'm singing Oberon here and also performing a recital. And, when I perform recitals, I love singing all sorts of that kind of romantic repertoire and all those things that I feel fit my voice really well. They weren't written for a countertenor. It might not be what people expect from a countertenor, but I certainly seize those opportunities to sing all of that beautiful classical music that, mezzos usually get to sing, that we should get to sing sometimes too.
Someone wants to know, we've sort of touched on this a little bit, but why did you choose this voice? Because clearly, Samuel, your voice is your voice, but John and Arya, you could have sung in a lower register. What made you decide that countertenor was where you lived, where you belonged?
I think it's very similar. I mean, if you listen to a lot of the old school singers, and I'm talking about Leontine, for me, Leontine Price and Shirley Verrett and Grace Bunbury and Simon Estes and George Shirley and Renee Fleming and, Marilyn Horne and all these singers, what they will tell you is that your voice kind of chooses you, and you go where the voice leads you. And I believe that is what my voice, I always tell people this, I have always been a countertenor. I've always been that voice type since I was in high school, and I only dabbled as a tenor. I was a tenor for 1 year in college, going into college, and then I was like, this is not who I am. It just didn't feel like me, but I was always singing as a soprano. I sang as a soprano in high school. I sang as a soprano in church choir. So it just was a part of me. And I don't know. I don't think I chose to sing it. I just sing. And I happen to be a countertenor.
Yeah, and I was also kind of similar. I never had an aha moment of discovering I was a countertenor. For me, like I sort of mentioned earlier, it was really I wanted to stay in the Brooklyn Youth Chorus, so I kind of just sort of finagled and still sang those, what was now falsetto kind of pitches. But yeah, I sang one role as a tenor in high school, Captain Dick in Naughty Marietta by Victor Herbert, and I say I was I'm a decent countertenor, but I am truly the world's worst baritone. I mean, like John said, it kind of just chooses you, and I certainly can't imagine anything else. And I think if tomorrow I decided to try and make it professionally as a tenor or a baritone, I would not go very far. So I think we all we end up where we're meant to be.
Yeah, you follow your compass.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about your recording projects, because you're all have recently done or are involved in. John, you are in New York to record right now. Can you tell us a little bit?
I can't tell you much about it because I'm still working on it, and I'm a firm believer in not releasing too much detail about something until it's complete. But I will tell you that I'm working with some of the most extraordinary writers and some of the most prolific producers in the world. I'm working with like the David Foster of our time. I will not say his name. It'll just leave you thinking about who I'm talking about. And some writers who are in the Writers Hall of Fame. It'll be an album that no one is expecting. And I'll just say, keep your eyes open for it to be released, your ears and your eyes open for it to be released, probably in the summertime or the fall, maybe even a little earlier than that. Or you'll start hearing some swirls, going around of music. But I'm really excited about it. It's been a dream of mine for my entire life to work on a project just like this. So that's all I'll say about it. Okay. And just hopefully when it comes out that everybody will support me. That's the most important thing, that it'll be something that speaks to you.
And Samuel, what are you recording now?
I am recording a lot. I am recording next week. I will be recording the 3 Countertenors in Versailles, in Royal Opera in Versailles. I will be recording this season. I will be recording as well a soprano version of Gluck Orfeo. I have another 2 projects opera to record, and I am recording my second recital.
And your first recital, your first CD,
I have it.
It was really interesting because that was sort of a recreation of a historic. Thank you. You did a recreation of a historic concert with music of Handel and Gluck.
Yeah, it was very interesting for me because at least to me, these 2 composers, they are totally different, and I never thought that these 2 composers have been together in one concert. So with the help of musicologists, we discovered the program and everything. It was very exciting for me. It was it was a very nice memory. Yeah. It's a very nice album. You can order. Yeah, but I love these 2 composers. These are 2 composers that are in my life and will be forever in my life. I love Gluck, I love Handel, and really they are 2 wonderful composers, and I am very happy to pay tribute to these 2 wonderful masters. They are them. I have to say, there is no countertenor I think that there is no singer who haven't sang a Handel aria. Handel is a wonderful composer. He was famous in the beginning, and he's still famous now. He's wonderful. Yeah.
And Arya, you won a 2019 Grammy Award, and that was not for Baroque music.
No, yeah. So I've been fortunate to be part of a couple of recordings. Most recent that came out during the pandemic is a new recording of Handel's Saul with the Philharmonia Baroque Orchestra, which is probably my favorite role I've sung to date, David and Handel's Saul. Available on all platforms.
Your mother's so proud.
Yes, exactly. In a role I've been fortunate to do a couple times, and I'll be doing again in a couple of years. And a near and dear role. But yeah, the first recording I was a part of, it was really kind of right place, right time. It was right after I won the Met competition, and I got this kind of shocking great review in the New York Times that really sort of changed my life overnight. And then right that week, someone dropped out of a project and I stepped in, and we recorded it with the London Symphony. And it was a world premiere song cycle by this composer, Kenneth Fuchs, this wonderful composer. And the album won a Grammy in 2019 for Best Classical Compendium, which is the category for albums that have multiple soloists and multiple works, like different concertos, that kind of CD. And it was definitely a surprise. Quite, my first time recording was at Abbey Road Studios with the London Symphony, so it was pretty wild.
That's pretty cool.
An out-of-body experience.
Pretty cool. Cover characters tend to be larger than life. So which ones have been the easiest for you to relate to and find yourself in? Samuel?
I mean, my cliche character is Cherubino. This is a very, that was the question. Sorry.
Yeah, no. I'm sorry. Could you repeat who the character was?
Cherubino. I mean, Mozart Cherubino is my cliche character. I mean, it's like everybody, in every concert I make, everybody's like, "Can you sing Voy que Zapete, please?"
Again, not something written for countertenor, not for a woman. Yes.
Yeah, for a woman, but because they were not very good castrato in that time in Vienna. Really, I mean, really, Mozart really, because he had a very terrible experience with castrato, with Vincenzo al Prato and Idomeneo and all this stuff, and he chose a woman to sing the role. Yeah.
And John,
I have two. I mean, I really, I think just because of my circumstances in life, my life experiences, I really relate to Refugee in Flight, very, very much so, and also to John Blue and We Shall Not Be Moved. In fact, two very, very extraordinarily contemporary operas. So those are my two favorite roles that I've loved, and I love Xerxes too.
Have you had a chance to actually perform Flight? Because I hear that
yes,
all the
I have. I performed at my debut with Des Moines Metro Opera was singing the role of the refugee in Flight. So, and it was extraordinary. Jonathan Dove came in to see it and was very, very pleased. So I love that role.
That's terrific, because I've only heard the aria in voice competitions. I've never had a chance to see the opera.
Oh yeah, you should see it. Whenever it's programmed, you should see it. It's absolutely amazing.
I would love
I think it's the most underrated contemporary operas. It really kind of has everything, every bit of comedy and drama that you really kind of want.
Everything. And people don't do it in America, which is so sad because it's not written by an American composer. That's the only reason why they don't do it here. Not because it isn't extraordinary, but because it's not by an American composer. How selfish can we be sometimes? But Flight is absolutely stunning.
Well, and one more thing I'd say about Flight too is just, to me, the mark of true like masterpieces is pieces that really speak to people beyond the time in which they were written. Mm-hmm. And here's an opera that was premiered, I think, in 1998 or something like
97.
that. 97. So, 24 years ago. But, the sort of main through line, the fundamental sort of takeaway from the whole piece is the story of this refugee. Mm-hmm. And, what could be more relevant or moving or meaningful, sadly, continually in our world. So to me, it's a real masterpiece.
Yeah, unfortunately, the more things change, the more they say the same.
Yeah.
Arie?
I would say also the refugee, as the grandson of Holocaust survivors, it's something that, every time I get a chance to sing that aria, it's, at the very top of my list. But and I guess another Jewish through line, but really David and Saul, one of those characters, one of those figures that I kind of grew up idolizing and hearing about and, and all sorts of Jewish things. And so then to get to kind of really dig into sort of a Jewish hero like that is, it's just been a real thrill.
So you all three have fantastic stage presence. And I wonder, do you feel like that's something you're born with, or is this something, especially John, you as a teacher, you teach students feel this can be learned?
I think you can learn anything, especially when I don't think anybody's has an innate sense of being on stage. I think that you learn, I've always felt that you learn by doing. The more that you do it, because if I throw somebody on the stage right now, yeah, you'll turn on, but you might not know exactly what to do. But those are definitely things that are cultivated by your people that you learn from, or people who are mentors in your life. Luckily, we've all had stage training. I think since we've all gone to music schools, we've all had stage training. So that's something that definitely has propelled us forward on the stage. But certainly, I don't know that people are born with just being ready for the stage. But I do think that there are people who just light up when you go on the stage, and I think all of us have that. I mean, I love a camera and I love being on stage. So anytime that I'm on stage, I just completely turn into my alter ego. And that just is a part of stagecraft. I will say that there are differences from being on stage and being on camera. And you learn those things by doing it, just like I learned by being on The Voice. Like you learn very, very much so what the differences are.
Did they teach you that?
No, I think you just learn it by doing it. Like you will learn. I think that whenever I've covered at the Met, I've always covered in a show that was being HD broadcast. So you learn that for the stage, very minute movements are easily caught and picked up on camera, like the flick of a hand, or a finger, they'll pick that up and it's made into this big thing. Or a small movement or gesture or facial expression is caught. And you learn that you don't need big movements for camera the way you need normally on stage to be conveyed. But also I say the similarity in that is oftentimes when learning or teaching a student, I'll tell them do less to bring the audience into you. And that's literally the same thing you're doing on camera.
Samuel, Aryeh, stage presence, born with, taught?
Yeah, I mean, I think like sort of what John was saying, it's definitely a combination of nature and nurture. And yeah, I mean, I think something that I think when I'm asked by younger singers, I feel like we're all probably asked by younger singers for advice. Relatively often you get emails from people asking for, what your tips would be. And in my mind, I never went to music school, but something that I think is kind of underemphasized is the whole acting side of things and all of that kind of stage side of things. And from what I gather, people tend to have a class or two in that sort of stuff, but it's really not an emphasis in classical music training. And it's something that I kind of took upon myself when I first entered some young artist programs to just study some of the great, all these acting technique masters, and just reading their books and trying out their techniques and things. And I think it's something that we all really benefit from. But you certainly have to have some sort of natural spark. If you're born and you're a total wallflower, I don't know if you can ever fully become a stage animal. So
yeah,
it's definitely a combination, I would say.
And Samuel, did any of your ballet
Yeah, of course.
training translate?
That helped me a lot. I made ballet 6 years in my life, so I have a notion about the stage, about how to move and where to go. But I think that I agree with John and Harry, because I think that you need both, and also you need to live. I always say to everybody, we need to live. We need to have experience in life, and after we have to bring it to stage. But of course, when you don't have much experience in your life, it's difficult. I mean, to be strong on a stage, but I think that that's the most important thing for me. You need to go out and you need to live and have experience, and good experience, bad experience, and really bring all to stage.
Yep.
I would add on to that too. I would just say too, I couldn't agree more, Samuel, and just the idea of I think it was a masterclass that Joyce DiDonato was giving that I watched years ago, where she talked about how you have to have life experiences to sing about. And I think young singers, particularly, we can get kind of trapped in like, I just have to be in the practice room and got to work on this and work on that. But if you don't have life experiences to bring that audience on a journey with you, that's why we all go to the theater. We all go to the theater to kind of see some part of ourselves in what we see on stage and to kind of escape our own troubles and understand them more, and if you don't have those experiences to sing about, you have nothing really to sing about. So you have to live that life, experience heartbreak and love and angst and fear and, all those things. And so you have something to bring to the stage.
Well, I think that's a great place to leave it. I want to thank you all so much. Aryeh Nussbaum Cohen, John Holliday, and Samuel Mourinho. Aria and John, I look forward to your debuts at the Met next season, and I look forward to yours, Samuel, whenever you want
Yeah.
your Met debut.
I will need a microphone for the Met. It's too big for it.
I want to say thank you to everybody for joining us and for your questions. Please support 92Y with a donation if you can to keep all their programming going. And again, thank you all and good night, or if you're in Australia, good night.
Good night.